Great. All right. Hi, folks. Thank you again to Red Cross for hosting, and thanks for making a little bit of time for me to add a few thoughts here on the 10-year anniversary of the CNCF. So great to be back here. I was here last year. Again, thanks to Red Cross for hosting. It's such a great venue. My name is Daniel Krook. I lead developer experience at the CNCF, which means I do everything. My team does everything we can do to make our maintainers happy. We host over 200 projects, so just making sure they've got what they need and they're happy at the CNCF. So Kubernetes itself turned 10 years old last year. There was a bunch of celebrations. And the CNCF itself, as its open source home, is celebrating 10 this year. So I'm going to take you through the last decade, some of the highlights, and talk a bit about where the community might be going in the next decade. So the CNCF was founded originally as a neutral home for Kubernetes, but it was always designed to host a broader portfolio of cloud-native projects as well, beyond Kubernetes. The first planning meetings happened May of 2015, and the CNCF itself was launched in mid-July at Open Source Convention that summer. The governance around the foundation came together throughout the year, including the first meeting of the governing board and the technical oversight committee, which essentially decides what projects are accepted into the CNCF. So I want to give a big thanks to the original folks. Many of them are still in our community. They gave us a strong start to this amazing community, and it continues to grow today with the help of folks like you in this room. So really appreciate all the support from day one all the way to year 10. And speaking of today, so we've now reached a contributor community of over 250,000 developers worldwide, and that's for Kubernetes, of course, but also I think we're up to 230 projects in addition to Kubernetes now. And Kubernetes itself trails only Linux as the highest velocity open source project out there. Behind those 200 projects, we've got about 2,000 maintainers worldwide, and many of our overall contributions come from the East Coast and the 95 corridor in particular. So thank you if you're one of our maintainers. I know Lynn is here. She did a talk earlier, and I know we've got additional ones as well, so thank you. Okay, so back to the origins of cloud-native computing. The roots really started taking hold about 25 years ago, starting from the uptake of virtualization after the first dot-com crash and moving towards the broad adoption of containerization in 2015. There's also been a steady march towards open source options across the whole industry, and that makes open source essentially the default today. We started proprietary, and we've really gone open source first for everything, and that's going to touch in about what I say about AI in the future here. So the founding of the CNCF, again, started back in 2015, building on that legacy. The CNCF was organized, announced, and its governance structure pulled together. The following year, Kubernetes was the first project proposal evaluated by the newly established Technical Oversight Committee. Again, they manage the project pipeline that comes in. Prometheus came in shortly after that. We got our first full-time leader, staff at the CNCF, Dan Kahn, was our first director. And we started running events. So there was KubeCons beforehand, but the CNCF took over running KubeCons and has been doing that for 10 years. We had the first Cloud Native Day in Toronto, the first KubeCon in Seattle, and it's been growing since. We also had the first CNCF-hosted KubeCon EU in Berlin in 2017. The big news that year was we had Rocket and Containerd as competing solutions for runtimes come together under the big tent. And that's kind of one of the important things about the CNCF is it doesn't pick winners. It supports projects even when they are competing with each other to allow the best technology to go forward. Later that year, the first working group was established, and that focused on serverless. How does that fit in with Kubernetes and Cloud Native? And separately, WebAssembly was also born. So a lot of new compute options built around the containerization were evolving then. And so building on that serverless momentum, we had a boom in lightweight approaches to containerization. Serverless started moving away from the de facto AWS Lambda model and towards open source, open specification. We had Knative come out, as well as the Cloud Events standard, which just graduated last year. In 2019, observability became more and more important, especially as folks were deploying more and more microservices applications, needing to observe and see what's going on inside those clusters of many containers. OpenTelemetry was formed from a couple of projects to provide a pluggable architecture for observability, and it is the second most active CNCF project today. Skipping a bit to 2021, eBPF, I can never say that, provides a way to extend the Linux kernel to user space applications, and we saw several applications emerge from that, including Cilium, Falco, Pixie. Originally, it was focused on networking performance improvements, doing it lower level in the stack, but it actually enabled a whole bunch of other use cases like security and observability to come out. So that's a big part of CNCF projects today as well. On to 2023, Kubernetes was the de facto platform for enabling highly scalable AI training as well as inference workloads. And going back to that first KubeCon EU in 2017, OpenAI actually talked about how they used Kubernetes back then to train models and run inference on them as well. But this is really where the boom and interest on the chatbot era comes out, and that's led to a lot of creative innovations, new projects in the CNCF, as well as new features inside of Kubernetes. So there's great new features being released. Cloud Native Working Group released a white paper. DRA, Dynamic Resource Allocation, which allowed for GPU sharing in Kubernetes comes out, and other tools in the overall ecosystem started to emerge as well, or at least be accepted into the CNCF alongside other cloud native projects. This year, we've had two big Kubernetes releases. So back in the spring, there was a bunch of new features there to support massive AI workloads more efficiently. And just recently, at the end of August, the latest Kubernetes release brought DRA to a stable status, so helping you slice up things beyond just CPU and memory, so more resources available like the GPUs and other things that support AI workloads. And there's a whole bunch of other more granular and observability-related alpha features that were released to support AI as a first-class citizen in Kubernetes. This year, we're also seeing convergence of AI development, a lot of innovation, start to adopt many of the stable tools and specifications that have existed in the cloud-native world. So they're building on the shoulders of giants. So for example, we have a new sandbox project called KitOps, and what that does, and in ModelPack, and they take the OCI spec for container image formats and actually use that to host models. So not just containers now, you're containerizing models to run within all this infrastructure. We've seen agents and agentic workflows. Dapper agents are out there, how to take a task resource and bring in an LLM. You may have seen the presentation on K-Agent earlier, and it's got a few tools as well to support agent-based computing, as well as MCP. So a lot of amazing new projects came in this year, or new sub-projects of existing projects to support AI have come out. We're also seeing this year a trend towards open source models. So everything at the start of the year seemed to be about OpenAI and specific companies, large hyperscalers providing models, but we've seen a convergence towards open source. The Open Source Initiative tried to define what open source AI means. They didn't quite succeed. I know there's ongoing conversations, but that's a conversation if we want to see where that evolves, of the models, the weights, the data, what actually represents open source, just like the licenses did many years ago. So keep an eye on this space. And what does that all mean for cloud native AI going forward? So as we've seen with containerization and compute before that, we're seeing a move from proprietary to open source as the default. Abstractions are starting to come out there to make all this stuff easier to use for developers. You don't have to be a data scientist or an MLOps engineer to do that. So abstractions are emerging, just like Kubernetes wrapped infrastructure. You see a lot of new tools come out there to move folks up the stack to take advantage of AI. And the developer experience is improving now. So seeing AI projects adopt cloud-native best practices and the tools and specs out there hopefully can bring that all together. Okay, and as part of our 10-year anniversary, actually as part of the reception later today, we're going to be celebrating C10CF. this 10 years anniversary. And there are going to be parties like this all over the country, all over the world. Hopefully you can run one in your own neighborhood if you're not from the DC area. And I hope to see you at KubeCon North America in just 2 months. It's in Atlanta this year, not too far. And I'd like to see lots of some similar talks and see where AI evolves in the sessions that are brought there. So thank you very much. Thank you, the organizers, and thank you.